Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of Tuft with me, or basically like the whole process of me tufting a rug. Here you can see I've already finished up tufting into the actual material. Now I'm going to start to put the glue on. Sorry for any of you who watched the last video, I was a little monotone on that one. That's just kind of how I am when I'm watching these things, just because I get so focused in, and I was kind of tired that day. But to be fair, I was doing all this the couple days before, so. But yeah, I'm just coating the back with the rug glue, trying to get every single like square inch of it. So the first time I made a rug, I did it where I glued the back like this, and then I basically used like a spray adhesive glue to put the backing on afterwards. But I forget who it was. It might be the person who actually I watched to learn how to finish the rugs, and I'll tell you that in a little bit. But basically, if you time it right, you'll be able to use this glue and actually use that to get the backing to be, stuck to it as well and be like an adhesive. Of course, sometimes, it's not perfect every single time, so sometimes you do have to do a little extra gluing. But here you can see I'm kind of just setting up the stand with the backing and setting it all in place, trying to get all of the backing like attached to those nails that are on the back there. They still have a tiny bit of space back there, even though I'm like using most of it for tufting. So I try to use that to my advantage and smooth it all down. And here I'm stapling the edges there, trying to just get it all tight, or as tight as I can, to try and smooth it out and make sure the adhesive sticks properly. This process is usually when I'm like a lot more comfortable and I know things are kind of like getting finished. I'm grabbing the heat gun. You don't want to stay too long in one place. I learned the hard way you can burn the rubber feet on the back of these backings. So I just kind of heat gun, smooth down, heat gun, smooth down. And this is the next day. I'm cutting it all out on the edges here, using the sunlight to my advantage, trying to just get the shape going. Look at that. There we go. And again, another outfit change. I'm cutting out all the edges so that I can actually get like, I don't want to have too much room. Like I don't want to have too much material. So I just start cutting. And trimming the back. I remember somebody in the comments of my Tufting Tips for Beginners Part 2 video asked me a little more about, I believe it was finishing the rugs or smoothing them out. I kind of do that as I go along here through this rest of the process. I just kind of, I take this little like pet fur, I guess like, I don't even know what you'd call it. It's like a roller. It gets full and then you just clean it out every once in a while, as you can see. And then I take like one of those little ones you probably see on TikTok a lot, the metal one, and kind of scrape as I go. I don't want to go too hard, but I want to definitely make it look a little more presentable. This is kind of like, I guess this gets more deep into the actual yarn than the other one. The other one's just for, I guess, like basic cosmetic yarn that's at the top. And sometimes it helps. Like, I don't like the way it looks when it's like, when I do that one, it kind of pulls the yarn in certain ways. So you'll see here, I'm setting up, starting to shave. So what I do is I buy one of those shavers that like everybody has off Amazon. It has like the fake Louis Vuitton band, and then it has the little plastic thing that comes with it. I think I had to buy mine separately. It was like 10 bucks or something, but sometimes they just come with it. I would recommend just buying one that comes with it. And as I'm going, what you don't see, because you kind of have to like be doing it for a while, is I'm not just kind of letting it even itself out. Like, oh yeah, that was a part of it. Somebody was asking me, how do I get them even? How do I get them, level? I don't have anything to make it 100% perfect. I don't have like, I see people use like a metal vacuum type of deal. This, I just kind of grab and go with this, but I like to make sure I'm kind of pulling. You can't see the way I'm holding it, obviously. Doesn't look like I'm doing this, but during this, I'm kind of like pulling it towards me a little bit. I don't know if that really makes sense. I'm kind of lifting a little bit so it doesn't go too deep into the rug, because I've had it on my first or second rug. I think it was the first Dragon Ball Z rug that I was talking about how I shaped. I accidentally let it just I kind of just pushed that plastic piece because I thought it was just safe to push that down. And then I ended up cutting one of the edges so hard that you could see the backing of the tufting cloth. So you definitely want to pull up just a little bit. You want to like have it in your hand and kind of angle your hand back towards yourself a little bit is what I mean when I say pulling back, not actually pulling back and forth, so that you're not going too deep into it. That process was probably the most, like, of all this stuff I do, that's the most painstaking, like, hey, I gotta make sure this is right process. Because even when I'm focused in, sometimes I slip or I get scared and I'm like, oh man, did I cut a little too deep? So that's basically my process on that. As that changes in the future, I'll try to keep you guys updated on any like things I do differently. Here I'm cutting down the edges again. I think I took that ribbon tape and tried to see how thick it goes around the edges. So I learned this technique from AJ Makes. Shout out to AJ Makes, appreciate you. Basically, there's a few different methods you can do. You can take this outer white edging and you can sew it along with the ribbon tape. I have like a little self-sewing kit, like an automatic one, and I, for the life of me, can't figure it out. So I also tried to sew it by hand. I'm not good at it. So I just do this where I super glue these edges. I make sure they're about an inch, if not close to a ½ inch if I can. And then I glue these edges down. It kind of helps to make the rug, like sometimes it might change the shape of it if you didn't cut it right. So you want to keep an eye on it as you're going to make sure, you know, because some of those edges, I think way back in the first video, I mentioned that sometimes you'll have some material missing if you can't make a perfect circle or anything like that. Sometimes this will actually help with that, where when you flip it over, it kind of makes it look a little fuller. It kind of brings that edge outwards a little more, so it kind of makes the whole thing look like the shape you want it to, or a little rounded. I don't really use a technique to do that. It's just kind of like one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to get that, you know, exact yarn into that exact tiny centimeter of tufting material, so I'm just going to hope it looks good. And, you know, 9 times out of 10 so far, the 6, 7, 8 months I've been doing it, this works really well. It would look a lot better, in my opinion, if I sewed it. It's just so difficult for me that it's just easier to super glue these edges, make sure that they look pretty good and that they're, you know, pretty tight most times. Sometimes, like in my photos on Instagram, I didn't really smooth out the back here. You'll see that, like, those big, I guess it looks like they were just folded over angles on the back. You can smooth it. Nobody really looks at the back anyways. I know a lot of people don't care, but presentation for me is, including the back, is important. And I wouldn't say I messed up there. I just wasn't really paying attention on this one, because I was just like, all right, you know, I want to make this look good. I want to make it so I can talk over this, and I want to kind of just, you know, make this big weird shape, because this is not my typical, you know, I've not done something this shape that has been this big before, so I guess this was a first for me as well. And there I'm just finishing out some of the edges that are sticking up. Sorry for my gross foot. So I have the ribbon tape that I'm putting around the edges just to make it look nicer, because you don't want to have it where, well, I mean, sometimes you can experiment, right? You can do what you want, but I have thought before about just cutting those edges, the white edges that I just super glued, off completely and then trying ribbon tape. The difference would be, I assume, you see how it folds underneath, like right in this shot, you can see how it's kind of like folded underneath, and you can see it through the ribbon tape. But that looks a little nicer than like a cut edge would if you just cut the ends off. I mean, I guess it really is up to everybody's preference. It's something I'd be willing to try in the future, but I would imagine it probably doesn't look as good as those rounded edges. The hard part about projects like this is the ribbon tape. It's hard to make it look straight as you're going around corners, so it just kind of looks a little janky. You'll see at the end there's parts that I go back over, or I put an extra piece of ribbon tape over. A big piece like this, luckily I'm able to mostly make it look pretty good. but like that edge right there is pretty white on the outside. Again, not what the people are going to be looking at when they actually use these rugs. When I hit corners like that, I like to fold it over itself if I can, and have not just a right angle. I kind of fold it in on itself and then make it turn. If you can see, it's kind of flap right there. It's kind of a flap right there at that right angle I took. And then I just glue the extra little flap down, because in my mind it's better to have more material than less, and hopefully it doesn't get caught on anything. I'd rather take that risk creatively. Here, you see me do it again. And then right towards the end there, I'm gonna go around again and then just finish these edges off. Some of these edges, there's too much white. It's kind of the issue that happens when doing this method. But I try to glue them down just to make it look good. I did my best to cut this as perfectly as I could so it just looks like a squared angle there. Got a little glue on it, but again, not the biggest deal. Gluing down those open edges. And I'm gonna do this for a few more minutes. There was a little bit of white, like where the tufting material was still sticking out, so I cut that. Here I'm hitting those edges. Shortly I'm going to be grabbing that other piece of material and putting it right over there just to make it look a little more clean. But still a very presentable, very nice rug, I would say. Very proud of this one. I actually really love the design. I'm glad it ended up being the next one I made, I guess. I think I'm going to clean it again. I don't know if I do. There we go. Clean it again. We're just about done. I trimmed some of the little edges, but there it is. Thank you guys for watching again, and I hope to talk to you soon.